Ambassador Sarah Chen stood before the Galactic Council, her hands clasped behind her back as she surveyed the semicircle of alien representatives. The great chamber on Nexus Prime buzzed with tension, translators working overtime to convert her words into hundreds of different languages and communication methods. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "Humanity comes before you today not as conquerors, but as friends seeking peaceful coexistence. However, we must address the growing aggression toward human colonies in the Outer Rim territories." The Zephyrian representative, a towering insectoid creature with 4 arms and compound eyes, clicked dismissively. "The humans speak of peace while their military ships patrol our borders. Your species has been in space for barely 2 centuries. What could you possibly threaten us with?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the assembly. The Karathi delegate, resembling a crystalline being that refracted light in mesmerizing patterns, projected thoughts directly into the translation matrix. "These newcomers think their primitive weapons and crude faster than light drives make them equals to civilizations that have ruled the stars for millennia." Sarah felt the weight of Earth's hopes on her shoulders. Behind her calm exterior, she knew what most of these beings didn't. Humanity had been deliberately downplaying their capabilities since first contact 15 years ago. The decision had been made at the highest levels of Earth's government after studying galactic politics through careful observation and intelligence gathering. "We understand your skepticism," Sarah continued, maintaining her diplomatic tone, "but I urge you to reconsider your stance on human territorial rights. Our colonies have been attacked 17 times in the past 6 months. Mining stations destroyed, transport ships captured, civilians killed or enslaved. We've shown remarkable restraint, but our patience has limits." The Vorthon ambassador, a reptilian creature with scales that shifted color with emotion, hissed with amusement. "Restraint? You mean weakness. Your people flee at the first sign of conflict. Even the Galactic Enforcement Division considers humanity a protected species rather than a true military power." This drew laughter from several delegates. The hegemonic alliance, comprising the 5 most powerful species in the galaxy, had long viewed humans as useful for their adaptability and resourcefulness, but hardly a threat to established order. Earth's military displays had been carefully choreographed to appear capable but not overwhelming. Sarah's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. She touched a small device on her collar, sending a coded signal back to Earth. The message was simple. "Diplomatic solution unlikely. Recommend preparation for alternative measures." "I want to share something with this council," she said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. 3 months ago, the Hegemonic Alliance raided a human research facility on Kepler 442b. What you found there was exactly what we wanted you to find. Basic defensive systems, standard spacecraft designs, conventional energy weapons. The chamber fell silent. Even the constant background hum of translation devices seemed to quiet. What you didn't find was our real technology. What you didn't see were our actual capabilities. What you failed to understand is that humanity has been showing you only what we wanted you to see. The Nexari Prime Minister, a gaseous being contained within an environmental suit, spoke through synthesized sound waves. "You're bluffing. Our intelligence networks are the most sophisticated in the galaxy. We know everything about human military capacity." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "Do you? Then explain why your intelligence couldn't detect the 37 stealth observation platforms we've had monitoring this very station for the past 5 years. Explain why your sensors didn't notice the quantum tunneling device that's been recording every classified conversation in this building." Panic began to spread through the assembly. Security chiefs were frantically checking their instruments, finding nothing. The Hegemonic Alliance representatives huddled together, their confidence shaken. "For 15 years we've been the friendly newcomers, grateful for any scrap of territory you'd allow us to settle. We've traded our medical knowledge, our cultural contributions, our labor for the privilege of existing peacefully among you. But we've also been watching, learning, and preparing." The Karathi delegate's crystalline form darkened with agitation. "Impossible. Our technology is thousands of years ahead of yours. Your species barely achieved nuclear fusion when we first made contact." "Nuclear fusion," Sarah repeated thoughtfully. "Yes, that's what we let you think was our peak achievement. Just like we let you think our fastest ships could barely achieve factor 12 FTL. Just like we let you believe our most powerful weapons were antimatter torpedoes with standard yield warheads. She paused, letting her words sink in. Around the chamber, alien physiologies displayed various signs of stress and confusion. Skin colors changed, breathing patterns altered, electromagnetic fields fluctuated. Humanity has a saying, speak softly and carry a big stick. We've been speaking very softly for 15 years. But the stick we carry is bigger than you can imagine. The Zephyrian representative's mandibles clicked nervously. What are you saying exactly, human? I'm saying that every human colony that's been attacked, every ship that's been destroyed, every civilian that's been killed, has been carefully documented. We know exactly who was responsible. We know which species authorized the attacks. We know which government officials gave the orders. Sarah walked closer to the center of the assembly, her footsteps echoing in the sudden quiet. We also know about the secret meetings where you've discussed partitioning human space among yourselves. We know about the plans to use humans as a client species, providing labor and resources while having no real voice in galactic affairs. We know about the timeline you've established for complete subjugation of our colonies. The silence was deafening now. Even the mechanical sounds of life support systems seemed muted. So here's what's going to happen, Sarah continued, her voice carrying the authority of an entire species behind it. You're going to cease all hostile actions against human territories immediately. You're going to compensate the families of every human killed in your unprovoked attacks. You're going to recognize humanity's right to self-determination and territorial sovereignty. The Vorthon ambassador's scales had turned a sickly yellow color. And if we refuse? Sarah's smile was cold as space itself. Then you'll discover that the peaceful, restrained humans you thought you knew never really existed. You'll learn why a species that fought its way up from hunter-gatherers to space travelers in just a few thousand years might not be the pushover you assumed we were. She turned toward the exit, then paused. You have 72 standard hours to provide a formal response. Choose wisely. The galaxy's future depends on it. As Sarah left the chamber, her words hung in the air like a storm cloud. Behind her, the most powerful beings in the galaxy sat in stunned silence, suddenly uncertain about everything they thought they knew about the newcomers from Earth. Admiral Marcus Rodriguez stood in the command center of the Terran Defense Network, watching holographic displays that showed the positions of every human ship, station and colony across 17 star systems. The walls around him hummed with activity, as thousands of personnel coordinated what would either be humanity's greatest diplomatic triumph or its first true interstellar war. Admiral, we're receiving the Galactic Council's official response, announced Lieutenant Commander Park, her voice tight with anticipation. Rodriguez nodded grimly. 71 hours had passed since Ambassador Chen's ultimatum. In that time, human colonies had been placed under strict security protocols, civilian transports had been recalled to protected space, and the real human fleet had begun moving into position. Put it through, he ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the Nexari Prime Minister's environmental suit. Behind the alien leader, Rodriguez could see the other hegemonic alliance representatives. Their body language, even filtered through alien physiology, spoke of arrogance and defiance. People of Earth, the synthesized voice began, the Galactic Council has considered your requests. We find them unacceptable and based on obvious deceptions. Your ambassador's claims about hidden technology and surveillance capabilities are clearly desperate bluffs from a species facing inevitable subjugation. Rodriguez felt his jaw clench, but he kept his expression neutral. Around him, his staff continued their work, though he could sense their tension. Therefore, the Nexari continued, the Council has voted to accelerate our timeline for bringing humanity into proper compliance with galactic order. Your colonies have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Any resistance will be met with overwhelming force. The transmission cut off. For a moment, the command center was silent except for the soft hum of computers and life support systems. Well, Rodriguez said finally, they made their choice. Commander Park, initiate Operation Revelation. Send the authentication codes to all fleet commanders. Yes, sir, Park replied, her fingers dancing across her console. Authentication codes transmitted. All units are reporting ready status. Rodriguez activated his personal communicator. This is Admiral Rodriguez to all human forces. Operation Revelation is now active. Show them who we really are. Across human space, Ships that had been hiding in asteroid fields, behind planetary bodies, and in the dark spaces between stars, suddenly came online. These weren't the lumbering cargo haulers and modest patrol craft the galaxy had grown accustomed to seeing. These were vessels of war, designed with technology that had been secretly developed for decades. The HNS Retribution, humanity's first true dreadnought, powered up its quantum displacement drives. At 2 kilometers long and bristling with weapons the galaxy had never seen, it represented 15 years of hidden research and development. Its sister ships, the Vengeance, Justice, and Reckoning, took positions throughout the Sol system. Lieutenant Commander Sarah Kim, aboard the stealth frigate Silent Hunter, watched her sensors as the Zephyrian Third Fleet approached the human mining colony on Tau Ceti Prime. The aliens had no idea her ship was there, cloaked by technology that bent light and electromagnetic radiation around its hull. "Captain," she reported to the bridge, "Zephyrian fleet is moving into attack formation. 12 heavy cruisers, 36 destroyers, support vessels. They're not even bothering with shields yet." Captain Jackson's voice came back steady and cold. "They're about to learn a very expensive lesson. Kim, prepare to decloak on my mark. Target their flagship with the Quantum Lance." The Quantum Lance was humanity's most closely guarded secret. While the galaxy used energy weapons and kinetic projectiles, humans had developed technology that could manipulate matter at the subatomic level. A single shot could cause a ship's own hull to collapse into itself, creating a localized implosion that would tear the vessel apart from within. On Nexus Prime, emergency alarms began blaring throughout the Galactic Council chambers. The Karathi delegates' crystalline form flickered with agitation as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. "This is impossible," the delegate transmitted frantically. "Our sensors are detecting massive energy signatures from human space. Ships appearing from nowhere. Technology readings that don't match any known specifications." The Vorthon ambassador's scales had shifted to deep red, indicating extreme stress. "How could they hide this from us? Our intelligence networks monitor every spacefaring species constantly." The answer came from Dr. Elena Vasquez, head of Human Intelligence Operations, as her image appeared on screens throughout the galaxy via hijacked communication networks. Her transmission was being broadcast simultaneously to every major population center, every military base, every government facility. "Greetings to the peoples of the galaxy," she began, her voice calm and professional. "For too long, your leaders have operated under false assumptions about humanity. Today, we correct those misunderstandings." The transmission switched to show technical schematics and combat footage that made even the most advanced alien species pause in shock. "You assumed our FTL technology was limited to Factor 12 speeds. In reality, our fastest ships can achieve Factor 37, allowing us to cross the galaxy in a fraction of the time you believed possible." The display showed human ships moving at impossible speeds, arriving at distant star systems in mere hours instead of weeks. "You thought our weapons technology was centuries behind yours. However, while you focused on increasing the power of energy weapons, we took a different approach. We learned to manipulate the fundamental forces that hold matter together." Footage showed a human destroyer firing a single shot that caused an entire asteroid to simply cease existing, its matter converted directly into energy according to Einstein's equation. "You believed our military consisted of a few hundred outdated vessels. The truth is, humanity has been building a real fleet for 15 years. Ships designed specifically to counter every known alien technology and exploit the weaknesses we've observed in your defenses." The transmission showed vast shipyards hidden in the dark spaces between stars, massive industrial complexes that had been assembled in complete secrecy. Thousands of ships, from nimble fighters to massive battleships, hung in formation like sleeping giants finally awakening. Back in the command center, Admiral Rodriguez watched as the first engagement began. The Zephyrian fleet at Tau Ceti Prime had opened fire on what they thought was a defenseless mining colony. Instead, their weapons struck military-grade shields that absorbed the energy and redirected it into massive capacitor banks. "Silent Hunter, you are cleared to engage," Rodriguez transmitted. Captain Jackson's ship decloaked directly behind the Zephyrian flagship. The Quantum Lance fired once, a barely visible beam of twisted spacetime that struck the alien vessel amidships. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then the massive cruiser began to fold in on itself. its hull plates crushing inward as the ship's own matter was turned against its structural integrity. The other Zephyrian ships spun around in panic, trying to locate their invisible attacker. But the silent hunter was already gone, having jumped to a new position using micro-FTL drives that could make instantaneous short-range movements. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out as human forces revealed themselves. Ships thought to be cargo haulers suddenly sprouted weapon arrays that had been hidden behind false hull plating. Mining stations activated defensive systems that could hold off entire fleets. Colonies that appeared helpless launched fighters that moved faster and hit harder than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The hegemonic Alliance's military commanders found themselves facing an enemy that knew their every tactic, their every weakness, their every strategic doctrine. 15 years of observation had given humanity a complete understanding of how their enemies fought. But the aliens knew nothing about how humans waged war. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched in horror as their military superiority crumbled in a matter of hours. The Nexari Prime Minister's environmental suit leaked coolant as his stress reached critical levels. Impossible, he kept repeating. Impossible. How could we have been so wrong? Dr. Vasquez's transmission continued, her image now showing her standing in what was clearly a massive command center, filled with technology far beyond anything the galaxy possessed. Your mistake was assuming that a young species couldn't teach an old galaxy new tricks. You forgot that humans have something most of you lost long ago: the ability to innovate rapidly when survival is at stake. The camera pulled back to show the full scope of the human command center, with Admiral Rodriguez and his staff coordinating the defense of human space with precision and efficiency that shocked alien observers. Diplomacy has failed, Dr. Vasquez concluded. You chose to see humanity's restraint as weakness rather than wisdom. Now you face the consequences of that choice. The reckoning has begun. Captain Elena Ramirez stood on the bridge of the HNS Phoenix as it emerged from quantum fold space at the edge of the Karathi home system. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and confident despite facing the most heavily defended system in the galaxy. Tactical report, she ordered, settling into the command chair. Ma'am, we're detecting 47 orbital defense platforms, each one the size of a small moon, reported Lieutenant Chen from the sensor station. 3 planetary shield generators protecting the homeworld. Approximately 200 capital ships in defensive formation. Commander Torres, her first officer, whistled softly. The Karathi really don't take chances with their security. Those platforms could probably destroy a small fleet. Ramirez smiled grimly. They could destroy the old human fleet, maybe. But we're not the same species that limped into space 15 years ago, begging for scraps of territory. The Karathi had been the first to make contact with humanity, arriving in the Sol system when Earth was still recovering from the environmental disasters of the late 21st century. They had presented themselves as benevolent guides, offering to share basic space travel technology in exchange for human scientific knowledge and cultural exchanges. What they hadn't told humanity was that they viewed Earth as a potential source of slave labor. The Karathi reproductive cycle required massive amounts of manual work to maintain their crystal-based cities, and humans had proven remarkably adaptable to different environmental conditions. Captain, we're being hailed by the Karathi Defense Command, announced Communications Officer Park. Put them through. The main screen flickered to show a massive crystalline being, its faceted form refracting light in complex patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. When it spoke, the translation matrix converted its harmonic vibrations into standard galactic speech. Human vessel, you are in violation of Karathi sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction. Ramirez stood, straightening her uniform. This is Captain Elena Ramirez of the Terran Federation ship Phoenix. I'm here to deliver a message from Earth to the Karathi High Council. No messages are necessary. Your species has already proven its hostile intentions by attacking peaceful Galactic Council forces. Leave now, or we will demonstrate why the Karathi have ruled this sector for 10,000 years. Actually, Ramirez said, her voice taking on a harder edge. You're going to listen to what I have to say, and then you're going to realize that your 10,000 years of ruling anything are over. She nodded to Lieutenant Chen, who activated a new tactical display. The screen split to show not just the Phoenix, but dozens of other ships materializing throughout the Karathi system. Each one had been hiding behind advanced stealth technology that made them Invisible to even the most sophisticated sensors, the crystalline being's light patterns shifted to what human xenologists had learned indicated extreme shock. Impossible. Our sensors detected only one ship. Your sensors detect exactly what we want them to detect, Ramirez replied, just like they've been doing for the past 15 years. Do you remember the human survey ship that supposedly suffered engine failure and crashed on your fourth moon? The being's harmonics grew discordant. That was 12 years ago. We rescued the survivors and returned them to Earth as a gesture of goodwill. Those survivors carried something back with them. Detailed scans of your entire defense network, your military capabilities, your planetary shield frequencies. They also left something behind. Quantum monitoring devices that have been recording every conversation, every military briefing, every strategic planning session in your government. Commander Torres stepped forward. We know about Operation Crystal Harvest, your plan to begin systematic human enslavement starting next year. We know about the breeding programs you've designed to create more docile human variants. We know about the labor camps you've already started building on your outer colonies. The Karathi commander's form darkened, its crystalline structure seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. How could you possibly know these things? Because, Ramirez said, humans have one advantage you never considered. We're very good at pretending to be harmless while planning your destruction. On the tactical display, the Phoenix and its sister ships began moving into attack formation. But instead of conventional weapons, they deployed something the galaxy had never seen before: reality anchor mines. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of human theoretical physics, had spent 12 years developing technology based on quantum mechanics principles that most alien species considered impossible. While they had mastered energy manipulation and faster-than-light travel, they had never learned to manipulate the fundamental laws of physics themselves. You see, Ramirez continued as the mines took position around key Karathi installations, your species never developed beyond Type 2 technology on the Kardashev scale. You harness stellar energy, you manipulate matter at the molecular level, you've mastered conventional space-time manipulation, but you never learned to alter the basic constants that govern reality itself. The mines activated simultaneously. Across the Karathi system, the speed of light suddenly increased by a factor of 10 within localized zones. This had a devastating effect on their energy-based weapons, which were calibrated for standard physics. Laser beams that should have been invisible to the naked eye now moved so slowly that defenders could actually see them coming. Worse yet, the altered physics zones disrupted the quantum entanglement networks that the Karathi used for faster-than-light communication. Their entire command structure suddenly found itself unable to coordinate defense efforts. This is impossible, the Karathi commander transmitted, its harmonics now showing clear signs of panic. You cannot simply change the laws of physics. We're not changing them, Ramirez corrected. We're temporarily adjusting certain constants within localized space-time regions. It's a trick we learned from studying collapsed civilizations in dead star systems. Turns out there were species millions of years ago that developed this technology, but they used it unwisely and destroyed themselves. The Phoenix moved closer to the planet, its hull shimmering as it passed through the reality anchor fields without any apparent effect. Human ships had been designed to operate normally even when the fundamental forces of nature were in flux. Your orbital platforms are now completely useless, Commander Torres reported. Their targeting systems can't compensate for variable light speeds, and their power cores are going critical because the strong nuclear force is fluctuating in the altered zones. Throughout the system, massive Karathi defense installations began shutting down or exploding as their own technology turned against them. The crystalline beings who had ruled this sector for millennia watched helplessly as their greatest military assets became elaborate death traps. We could destroy your entire civilization right now, Ramirez said, her voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. Every ship, every station, every city could be turned to dust in minutes. Your planetary shields are worthless against weapons that operate outside normal physics. The Karathi commander's form had become almost transparent with terror. What do you want from us? Simple. Full reparations for every human killed or enslaved by your forces. Complete withdrawal from all human territory. And most importantly, you're going to help us send a message to the rest of the galaxy. Ramirez activated another display, this one showing similar scenes playing out across dozens of star systems. Human forces were simultaneously engaging every major military power in the galaxy, using technology and tactics that turned their enemies' greatest strengths into fatal weaknesses. You're all going to learn the same lesson today, she continued. Humanity isn't just another client species to be managed and exploited. We're the new apex predators in this galaxy, and we've been studying our prey for 15 years. The reality anchor mines began shifting their effects, now altering gravitational constants around the Karathi homeworld. The planet's massive crystal cities, which had stood for thousands of years, began to crack and crumble as their structural integrity failed under changing physical laws. "Stop," the commander pleaded. "We surrender. Please stop this madness." Ramirez nodded to her crew, and the gravitational effect stabilized before any permanent damage was done to the planet's surface. "Smart choice. You have 1 hour to transmit a full confession of your crimes against humanity to every world in the galaxy. You will also transfer complete technical specifications for all Karathi military technology to our databases." "And if we refuse?" Captain Ramirez smiled, but there was no warmth in it whatsoever. "Then we'll demonstrate what happens when reality anchor technology is used offensively instead of defensively. Would you like to see what occurs when we reduce the electromagnetic force constant to zero? Your crystalline bodies would simply cease to hold together at the molecular level." The transmission ended abruptly as the Karathi commander rushed to comply with human demands. Throughout the galaxy, similar ultimatums were being delivered to every species that had ever threatened humanity. Commander Torres looked at the tactical display showing human victory after HSS Slavi. General Harrison Wade stood in the war room beneath the Swiss Alps, watching holographic displays that showed the complete reorganization of galactic power in real time. 3 days had passed since Operation Revelation began, and the results exceeded even the most optimistic human projections. "Status report," he ordered, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of tactical displays. Colonel Martinez stepped forward, tablet in hand. "Sir, 14 major species have formally surrendered and are complying with our demands. The Karathi have transferred their complete military database. The Zephyrians have withdrawn from all disputed territories. The Vorthons are paying reparations for the convoy attacks. What about the holdouts? 3 species are still resisting. The hegemonic alliance leadership has retreated to the fortress worlds in the galactic core. They're claiming this is all an elaborate human bluff and that our technology displays are sophisticated holograms." Wade grunted. The hegemonic alliance controlled the 5 most technologically advanced species in the galaxy. If they wouldn't accept human supremacy voluntarily, it would mean a war that could devastate entire star clusters. They're about to learn otherwise. "What's the status of Operation Prometheus?" Dr. Amanda Foster, the lead researcher on humanity's most classified project, activated a new display. "The stellar engineering platforms are in position around the Rigel system. We're ready to begin the demonstration whenever you give the order." Wade studied the tactical implications. The Rigel system was uninhabited but strategically located between major hegemonic alliance territories. What they were about to do there would send a message that couldn't be ignored or dismissed as trickery. Initiate Prometheus. Show them what humanity can really do. 50 light-years away, Captain Maria Santos watched from the bridge of the HNS Architect as massive construction platforms moved into position around the blue supergiant star Rigel. Each platform was the size of a small moon, built with technology that had been developed in absolute secrecy over the past decade. "Engineering reports all platforms are synchronized," announced her first officer. "Stellar collection arrays are online. Quantum manipulation fields are stable." Santos nodded. "Begin stellar harvest." The platforms activated simultaneously, projecting energy fields that surrounded Rigel completely. To outside observers, it would look like the star was being wrapped in a web of pure light. But the reality was far more terrifying than any alien species could imagine. Humanity had learned to harvest stars. The technology was based on principles discovered by Dr. Rebecca Chen, who had spent years studying the remains of ancient civilizations that had transcended physical existence. Those long-dead species had left behind clues about manipulating stellar formation and evolution, secrets that human scientists had turned into practical engineering. Rigel began to change. The blue supergiant, which had been burning for millions of years, started to pulse with new rhythms as the harvest platforms extracted its nuclear fire and channeled it into massive storage matrices. Within hours, Enough energy to power human civilization for centuries was being collected and compressed into portable form. But the real demonstration was yet to come. Phase 2, Santos ordered. Begin stellar restructuring. The platforms shifted configuration, now projecting gravitational manipulation fields directly into Rigel's core. The star's fusion processes, which had been running on automatic for eons, suddenly came under human control. Admiral Rodriguez's voice came through on the command frequency from Earth. All ships, this is Fleet Command. What you're about to witness is the culmination of 15 years of secret research. The hegemonic alliance thinks they can outlast us because they control more resources. They're about to learn that humans don't need to control resources when we can create them. The gravitational fields pulsed, and Rigel responded. The massive star began to contract, its outer layers being compressed inward while its core temperature soared beyond anything that occurred naturally. For a brief moment, the star seemed to pause, balanced on the edge of something unprecedented. Then Rigel exploded. But this wasn't a supernova. This was a controlled stellar detonation, with the energy being channeled and directed according to human will. The explosion's force was captured by the harvest platforms and converted into pure matter, using ERMC-2 in reverse. Within minutes, the platforms began manufacturing new materials, new elements, entire space stations constructed from the star's own substance. Where Rigel had once burned alone, there was now a complete solar system. Artificial planets with precisely calibrated orbits, space habitats larger than moons, defensive installations that could destroy entire fleets. Humanity had turned a single star into a military-industrial complex that could outproduce anything the galaxy had ever seen. The demonstration was being broadcast simultaneously to every major power in the galaxy. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council watched in stunned silence as the humans casually created matter from energy on a stellar scale. The Nexari Prime Minister's environmental suit began leaking coolant again. This has to be some kind of trick. Species don't just rebuild stars, but the energy readings were undeniable. Human technology had just converted a Type B supergiant into a manufacturing center in less than 6 hours. The implications were staggering. Dr. Foster's voice came through the galactic broadcast, her calm scientific tone making the impossible sound routine. For those viewing this demonstration, please note that we've just converted approximately 2.5 solar masses of hydrogen and helium into industrial infrastructure. The energy output of this facility exceeds the combined power generation of the top 50 galactic civilizations. The camera panned across the new Rigel system, showing shipyards that were already beginning to construct vessels using designs that no alien species had ever seen. These weren't just bigger versions of existing technology. These were ships built with materials that shouldn't exist, powered by forces that most species considered theoretical impossibilities. Back on Earth, General Wade received reports from intelligence operatives embedded throughout the galaxy. The hegemonic alliance leadership was in complete panic. Emergency sessions were being called on every major world. Military commanders were demanding explanations for how their intelligence networks had failed so completely. "Sir," Colonel Martinez reported, "we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout Alliance space. It looks like they're mobilizing everything they have for a final confrontation." Wade nodded grimly. "They're going to try to destroy us before we can complete more stellar engineering projects." "How long until the Rigel facility is fully operational?" 12 hours, Dr. Foster replied. "But we don't need to wait. The demonstration has already served its purpose. Every species in the galaxy now knows that humans can literally create industrial capacity from stellar matter." The general activated the communication array. "This is General Wade to all Alliance leadership. You have 1 hour to unconditionally surrender. Any hostile action against human forces will result in the immediate conversion of your home stars into industrial facilities." The response came faster than expected. Fleet Admiral Zextor of the Alliance Navy, a Vorthan whose scales had turned the color of old blood, appeared on the screen surrounded by other military leaders. "Humans," he hissed, "you may have impressive technology, but you lack the will to use it effectively. You've shown us your capabilities, but you haven't actually destroyed any populated systems. You're still thinking like the peaceful diplomats who begged for our approval 15 years ago." Wade smiled coldly. "You think we won't destroy populated systems? We know you won't. Your species is too concerned with casualties, too worried about civilian populations. You'll threaten and posture, But when it comes to actual genocide, you'll hesitate. And in that moment of hesitation, we'll destroy you." The general's expression never changed. "Colonel Martinez, please show Admiral Zextor what happened to the Kriktar system yesterday." A new display activated, showing a star system that had once been home to a minor species allied with the hegemonic alliance. The Kriktar had been known for their aggressive expansion policies and their practice of enslaving weaker species. The display showed the system as it existed now, empty space where planets had once orbited, with only a small artificial habitat containing approximately 1 million Kriktar survivors. The Kriktar made the mistake of attacking a human medical station, Wade explained, his voice emotionless. They killed 300 civilian doctors and nurses who were providing free health care to refugee populations. We responded by converting their home star into a weapons manufacturing facility. Their entire civilization now exists in a single space station, completely dependent on human charity for survival. Admiral Zextor's scales turned pale green. You destroyed an entire star system for 300 casualties? We destroyed a star system to send a message, Wade corrected. The message is simple. Humanity tried diplomacy first. When diplomacy failed, we revealed our true capabilities. Now that you know what we can do, any further resistance will be met with the complete dismantling of your civilizations. The general leaned forward, his weathered face filling the screen. The general leaned forward, his weathered face filling the screen. "You have 59 minutes to surrender, Admiral. After that, we start with your home systems. And unlike the Kriktar, we won't be leaving any survivors." The transmission ended, leaving the hegemonic alliance leadership to contemplate a choice between submission and extinction. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood once again before the Galactic Council, but this time the Great Chamber on Nexus Prime was nearly empty. Most species had withdrawn their representatives after witnessing humanity's stellar engineering demonstration. Only the core members of the hegemonic alliance remained, their earlier arrogance replaced by desperate defiance. 58 minutes, she announced, checking her chronometer. "Admiral Zextor, have you reached a decision?" The Vorthon military leader's scales had shifted through several color changes, finally settling on a mottled pattern that human xenologists had learned indicated extreme stress, combined with barely controlled rage. "We will not bow to terrorist threats," he declared, though his voice lacked the conviction it had carried days earlier. "The Alliance has survived for thousands of years. We will not be intimidated by upstart primitives regardless of their parlor tricks." Chen smiled sadly. "Parlor tricks. Even now you don't understand what you're facing." She activated a holographic display that showed the current positions of human forces throughout the galaxy. What the Alliance leadership saw made several of them step backward in shock. While you've been debating surrender, we've been positioning stellar engineering platforms around 47 major star systems. Not just Alliance territory, but every system controlled by species that have shown hostility toward humanity. The display zoomed in on specific systems, showing the massive construction platforms already in orbit around stars that powered entire civilizations. The technology you witnessed at Rigel wasn't a prototype or a one-time demonstration. It was the debut of our mass-production stellar manipulation system. We can now convert any star in the galaxy into whatever we need it to be. Fleet Admiral Kethavan of the Nexari fleet, whose environmental suit had been continuously venting stress pheromones, finally spoke up. "This is madness. You're talking about rewriting the fundamental structure of galactic civilization." "No," Chen corrected. "We're talking about ending galactic civilization as you know it and replacing it with something better. Something where species don't enslave each other, where might doesn't automatically make right, where younger civilizations aren't automatically treated as client states or resources to be exploited." The Karathi delegate, its crystalline form now dim and fractured from stress, projected thoughts directly into the translation matrix. "You speak of creating a better galaxy, but you're using the threat of genocide to achieve it. How does that make you better than us?" Chen's expression hardened. "Because we tried it your way first. We spent 15 years attempting peaceful coexistence. We shared our medical knowledge freely, contributed to galactic culture, followed your laws and customs even when they disadvantaged us, and in return you planned to enslave our entire species." She gestured to another display showing intercepted communications from Alliance intelligence services. "We have complete records of your plans. The breeding programs, the labor camps, the systematic destruction of human culture and identity. You weren't planning to conquer us, you were planning to erase us as a free people entirely. Admiral Zextor's tail lashed with agitation. That was theoretical planning, contingency scenarios for worst-case situations. Theoretical? Chen's voice rose for the first time since she'd begun speaking. The labor camps on Vorthan Colony 7 are already built. The genetic modification laboratories on Nexari Prime are fully operational. The slave markets on Karathi trading stations have been accepting deposits for human workers for 6 months. The silence that followed was deafening. Even the constant background hum of the station's life support system seemed muted. 43 minutes, Chen announced. Let me be absolutely clear about what happens if you don't surrender. We don't just destroy your military forces. We don't just conquer your territories. We systematically dismantle every aspect of your civilizations that allowed you to consider enslaving other species. The display changed to show detailed plans for post-war reconstruction. Your military hierarchies will be dissolved. Your resource extraction operations will be shut down. Your colonial administrations will be replaced with local self-governance. And your species will spend the next century working to repair the damage you've done to the countless worlds you've exploited. Fleet Admiral Kethvan's suit began emitting rapid clicking sounds, indicating extreme agitation. You can't simply restructure galactic civilization according to your own preferences. Watch us, Chen replied simply. At that moment, alerts began blaring throughout the chamber. The Nexari Prime Minister's personal communicator was transmitting urgent messages from their home system. What's happening? Admiral Zextor demanded. Chen checked her own communicator, then looked up with an expression of cold satisfaction. The Alliance 7th Fleet just attempted to attack our stellar engineering platform at Rigel. Admiral Torres was expecting something like this. The main display switched to show real-time footage from the Rigel system. The Alliance fleet, comprising over 200 ships including their most advanced dreadnoughts, had arrived expecting to destroy a construction facility protected by a handful of human vessels. Instead, they found themselves facing defenses that redefined the concept of military power. Captain Santos, still commanding from the HNS Architect, opened communications with the Alliance fleet. Alliance vessels, you are ordered to withdraw immediately. Any hostile action will trigger automatic defensive responses. The Alliance fleet commander, Admiral Threxkar of the Zephyrian Navy, responded with typical arrogance. Human vessels, you are vastly outnumbered. Surrender your facility and we may allow your crews to survive. Santos shook her head sadly. Admiral, you're about to learn why nobody attacks a human stellar engineering facility. The platforms around the reconstituted Rigel system activated defensive protocols that had never been tested in actual combat. Instead of conventional weapons, they used the star itself as a weapon. Focused gravitational fields reached out across millions of kilometers, selectively targeting individual Alliance ships. The effect was immediate and devastating. Massive dreadnoughts that had dominated galactic warfare for centuries suddenly found their hulls being compressed by gravitational forces equivalent to those found near neutron stars. But the true horror wasn't the destruction itself, it was the precision. Human technology allowed them to apply crushing gravitational forces to enemy ships while leaving their own vessels completely untouched, even when human and Alliance vessels were only meters apart. Within minutes, the entire Alliance 7th Fleet had been reduced to compressed metal spheres orbiting the artificial planets of the Rigel system. Not a single human casualty had been sustained. Back in the Council chamber, the Alliance leadership watched their most powerful military force destroyed without the attackers firing a single conventional shot. 37 minutes, Chen announced, as if the complete annihilation of a major fleet was a minor inconvenience. Admiral Zextor's scales had turned completely white, indicating terror beyond anything his species normally experienced. This is impossible. No civilization has ever developed such capabilities. Most civilizations don't spend their first decade in space being treated like potential slaves, Chen replied. Most species get to develop gradually, learning galactic customs and integrating peacefully into existing power structures. You denied us that opportunity when you decided we were too useful to be allowed real independence. She activated another display, this one showing human research facilities that had been hidden throughout the galaxy for over a decade. Did you think we spent 15 years just building ships and weapons? We've been studying every aspect of galactic civilization, not just your technology, but your psychology, your social structures, your economic systems, your biological weaknesses. The images showed vast databases containing detailed information about every species, every government, every military organization in the galaxy. The scope of human intelligence gathering was staggering. We know exactly how your societies function, and more importantly, we know exactly how to make them stop functioning. The gravitational weapons you just witnessed are actually among our more merciful options. Fleet Admiral Kethvan's environmental suit began releasing emergency stress chemicals. What are your other options? Chen smiled, but there was no warmth in it whatsoever. Biological warfare tailored to specific species genetics. Quantum viruses that can destroy technology at the subatomic level. Temporal displacement weapons that can remove entire fleets from the timeline. And our personal favorite, consciousness transfer technology that can relocate your entire population to virtual reality, environments where you can experience exactly what it feels like to be enslaved. The Karathi delegates' crystalline form began to crack audibly. You would condemn entire species to eternal torture? We would give you exactly the experience you planned to give us, Chen corrected. Nothing more, nothing less. Perfect justice. 28 minutes, she announced, then sat down in her chair for the first time since entering the chamber. I suggest you spend that time wisely, because in 28 minutes either you surrender unconditionally, or we begin demonstrating technologies that will make today's display look like a children's toy. With 18 minutes remaining on Ambassador Chen's ultimatum, the Galactic Council chamber erupted into chaos. Emergency communications flooded in from across Alliance territory as populations learned about the complete destruction of the Seventh Fleet. Panic was spreading through star systems that had considered themselves untouchable for millennia. Admiral Zextor stood before his fellow Alliance leaders, his scales cycling rapidly through colors that indicated internal conflict. The weight of billions of lives rested on decisions that had to be made in the next few minutes. We have to consider our options carefully, he said, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. If we surrender now, we're admitting that a species barely 2 centuries old can dictate terms to civilizations that have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Fleet. Admiral Kethvan's environmental suit was now venting so many stress chemicals that the chamber's air filtration systems were struggling to compensate. And if we don't surrender, they'll demonstrate weapons that make gravitational crushing look merciful. The Karathi delegate projected desperate thoughts into the translation matrix. There must be some alternative, some way to negotiate terms that preserve our dignity while acknowledging human superiority. Chen listened to their debate with the patience of someone who held all the cards. She understood their psychological position better than they did themselves. 15 years of studying galactic politics had taught humanity exactly how these species thought, how they made decisions, what they valued more than life itself. 14 minutes, she announced, interrupting their discussion. But since you seem to be having trouble making up your minds, let me help clarify your situation. She activated a new holographic display that showed detailed schematics of technology that made several Alliance leaders step backward in instinctive fear. This is a consciousness extraction device. It can download the complete mental patterns of any sapient being and store them in quantum matrices. The original body dies, but the mind continues to exist in a digital environment that we can control. Completely, the chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. We've already tested this technology on volunteers from our own species. The experience is indistinguishable from reality. Until we choose to remind the subject that they're in a simulation, we can slow down time perception so that a minute in the real world feels like years of subjective experience, or we can speed it up so that decades pass in moments. Admiral Zextor's tail had stopped lashing and was now hanging limply behind him. Why are you telling us this? Because, Chen continued, if you force us to take military action, we won't just kill your military personnel. We'll extract their consciousness and place them in simulation environments where they experience exactly the conditions you plan to impose on human slaves. Forever. She smiled with cold satisfaction. Your admirals will spend eternity in virtual labor camps, mining digital resources under conditions that would have broken human spirits. Your political leaders will experience perpetual enslavement, with their thoughts and desires being suppressed by chemical control systems that exist only in their simulated reality, but feel completely real to them. The Nexari Prime Minister's environmental suit began making alarming beeping sounds as his stress levels approached critical thresholds. That's beyond warfare. That's eternal torture. That's justice, Chen corrected. Perfect poetic justice. You plan to enslave us for your economic benefit. We're offering you the opportunity to experience slavery from the perspective of the enslaved. Consider it an educational opportunity. Fleet Admiral Kethavan suddenly collapsed, his environmental suit's life support systems overwhelmed by his physiological stress response. Medics rushed to stabilize him while the remaining Alliance leaders watched their coalition crumble in real time. 11 minutes, Chen announced. I should mention that we've already prepared consciousness extraction facilities for approximately 50 million Alliance citizens. Military commanders, government officials, corporate executives, anyone who participated in planning or implementing anti-human policies. The Karathi delegate's crystalline form was now so fractured that pieces were beginning to fall to the floor. How many of our people would you spare? That depends entirely on how quickly you surrender and how completely you comply with our terms, Chen replied. Full, immediate, unconditional surrender results in standard war crimes, tribunals, and reconstruction programs. Continued resistance results in the systematic extraction and digital enslavement of your entire leadership class. Admiral Zextor looked around the chamber at his fellow Alliance leaders. What he saw was the complete collapse of their collective will to resist. These were beings who had dominated galactic politics for thousands of years, and they were now facing an enemy that didn't just want to defeat them, but to fundamentally break their capacity for future resistance. What exactly are your terms for surrender? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Chen stood and activated a comprehensive display showing the post-war galactic structure that humanity intended to implement. Complete dissolution of the hegemonic Alliance military command structure. All warships to be turned over to human forces for decommissioning or conversion to civilian use. All colonial administrations to be replaced with local self-governance under human oversight. The terms were harsh but not impossible. The Alliance leadership found themselves clinging to the hope that they might survive with some measure of dignity intact. All species involved in planning or implementing anti-human policies will pay reparations equivalent to 10% of their gross planetary product for the next 50 years. These funds will be used to establish educational and cultural exchange programs designed to prevent future conflicts. Admiral Zextor nodded reluctantly. 10% was significant but survivable. All prisoners taken by Alliance forces during the recent conflict will be released immediately and provided with compensation for their suffering. All slave markets will be permanently shut down, and any species currently being held in bondage will be freed and provided with support for reintegration into galactic society. This was actually something most Alliance members could support. Slavery had been a source of internal tension for years. And finally, Chen continued, all Alliance species will participate in a mandatory cultural exchange program with humanity. Your best and brightest will spend time living in human society, learning our values and perspectives. In return, humans will study your civilizations to understand how advanced species can fall into the trap of viewing others as resources rather than equals. The terms were comprehensive, but not genocidal. The Alliance would survive, but it would be fundamentally transformed by the experience. 7 minutes, Chen announced. Do you accept these terms? Admiral Zextor looked at his colleagues one final time. The Nexari Prime Minister was unconscious from stress. The Karathi delegate was literally falling apart. Fleet Admiral Kethavan was receiving emergency medical treatment. The choice was clear. We accept your terms, he said, his voice carrying the weight of civilizational defeat. The hegemonic alliance hereby surrenders unconditionally to the Terran Federation. Chen nodded and activated her communicator. This is Ambassador Chen to all human forces. The alliance has surrendered. Implement Protocol 7 immediately. Throughout the galaxy, human ships began broadcasting the news of the alliance surrender. But instead of triumphant celebrations, they transmitted something that surprised even the defeated enemies. An offer of genuine partnership. Citizens of the galaxy, came the voice of Admiral Rodriguez from Earth. Today marks the end of an era dominated by fear and exploitation. Humanity didn't seek this conflict. but we're committed to ensuring it leads to a better future for all sapient species. The broadcast continued. To those who surrendered peacefully, we offer immediate inclusion in the new galactic order as equal partners. To those who resisted, we offer the chance to earn redemption through service to the common good. And to all species, we promise that never again will might alone determine right in this galaxy. Chen looked at the defeated Alliance leaders with something approaching sympathy. You have a choice now, she said quietly. You can spend the next century resenting your defeat and planning revenge, or you can work with us to build something better than what came before. Admiral Zextor slowly straightened his shoulders, some measure of dignity returning to his posture. What makes you think we can change? What makes you believe species that have dominated through force for millennia can learn to cooperate as equals? Chen smiled, and for the first time since entering the chamber, there was genuine warmth in her expression, because that's exactly what humanity had to learn. We were a violent, fractured species when we first reached the stars. Contact with galactic civilization forced us to evolve beyond our primitive instincts. She gestured to the holographic displays showing human technology and organizational structures. Everything you've seen today, all of our technological and social advances came from 15 years of being forced to cooperate as the weakest species in the galaxy. You taught us that survival requires not just strength but wisdom. 5 years after the surrender of the hegemonic alliance, Captain Elena Ramirez stood on the observation deck of the diplomatic station orbiting Nexus Prime, watching something that would have been unimaginable just a few years earlier. Ships from dozens of different species working together to construct a massive research facility. The station was a joint project between humanity and former Alliance members, designed to study the ancient ruins discovered in the galactic core. Saphirian engineers worked alongside human architects, while Karathi mathematicians collaborated with Terran physicists to unlock secrets left behind by civilizations that had vanished millions of years ago. Incredible, isn't it? Came a familiar voice behind her. Ramirez turned to see Admiral Zextor approaching, his scales now displaying the calm blue-green patterns that indicated contentment. The former Alliance military commander had become one of humanity's closest allies in the reconstruction effort, though the transformation hadn't been easy for either side. 5 years ago, you were planning to execute me for war crimes, Ramirez noted with a slight smile. Now you're asking my opinion on archaeological methodology. Zextor's tail swished in what humans had learned was the Vorthan equivalent of laughter. 5 years ago, I thought military dominance was the only way to maintain order in the galaxy. I've learned there are better approaches to leadership. The two officers stood together watching the construction crews. The site was remarkable not just for the cooperation it represented, but for the technology being employed. Human stellar engineering had advanced rapidly in the years since the war, and they were now capable of manipulating matter and energy on scales that bordered on the miraculous. The cultural exchange program is showing remarkable results, Zextor continued. My daughter just completed her 2nd year at the University of Mars. She's studying human literature and philosophy alongside quantum mechanics. She says she wants to become a poet-scientist when she graduates. Ramirez nodded approvingly. The human students on Vorthan Prime are having similar experiences. Apparently, your people's approach to mathematics is revolutionizing our understanding of multidimensional physics. This was the reality of the new galactic order. Instead of the harsh military occupation that many had expected after humanity's victory, the Terran Federation had implemented something unprecedented, a genuine partnership based on mutual respect and shared learning. The transformation hadn't happened overnight. The first year after the war had been tense, with many former Alliance species expecting severe retribution for their planned enslavement of humanity. Instead, they found themselves invited to participate in the largest technological and cultural exchange in galactic history. Human technology, which had been hidden for 15 years, was now being shared freely with any species that demonstrated a commitment to peaceful cooperation. In return, alien knowledge and perspectives were helping humanity advance in ways that would have taken centuries of isolated development. Captain Ramirez, Admiral Zextor, please report to the main conference room, came an announcement over the station's communication system. The archaeological team has made a significant discovery. The two officers made their way through corridors that bustled with activity. The station housed representatives from 47 different species, all working together on various projects ranging from medical research to artistic collaboration. It was a living symbol of what the galaxy could become when cooperation replaced domination. In the conference room, they found Dr. Amanda Foster and her team gathered around a holographic display showing structures that defied easy categorization. The ruins discovered in the galactic core were clearly artificial, but they operated according to principles that challenged the understanding of even the most advanced species. "What are we looking at?" Ramirez asked. Dr. Foster manipulated the display to show different angles of the mysterious structures. "We think we found evidence of the civilization that originally developed stellar engineering technology. The species that learned to manipulate stars and planets like we manipulate tools. The implications were staggering. If such a civilization had existed, why had they vanished? What had happened to beings capable of reshaping solar systems according to their will?" "The Karathi translation specialists have been working on the inscriptions," Foster continued. "What they've found suggests these beings didn't die out or destroy themselves. They evolved." A new display showed symbols and mathematical equations that hurt to look at directly. The concepts they represented were so far beyond current understanding that even human consciousness had difficulty processing them. "Evolved into what?" Admiral Zextor asked, his scales displaying the purple patterns that indicated intense curiosity. "We're not sure yet," Foster admitted, "but the inscriptions suggest they transcended physical existence entirely. They became something that exists in higher dimensions, beyond the constraints of matter and energy." Ramirez studied the ancient symbols, feeling a strange sense of familiarity. "Dr. Foster, do these equations look anything like the theoretical frameworks we developed for consciousness transfer technology?" Foster's eyes widened as she made the connection. "You're right. The mathematical structures are similar but vastly more advanced. It's as if our technology for digitizing consciousness was a primitive first step toward whatever these beings achieved." This discovery put humanity's recent technological achievements in a new perspective. The stellar engineering capabilities that had allowed them to dominate the galaxy were apparently just the beginning of what was possible for sufficiently advanced civilizations. "There's more," Foster continued, activating another display. "We found what appears to be a message specifically intended for younger civilizations. The translation is still rough, but the general meaning is clear." The display showed text that had been painstakingly decoded from the ancient inscriptions. "To those who find these ruins, you have reached the threshold of true civilization. The ability to manipulate stars and planets is not an end, but a beginning. The next step is to learn that power without wisdom leads to stagnation, while wisdom without compassion leads to isolation. Only when a species learns to value cooperation above domination can they begin the journey toward transcendence." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. The ancient civilization hadn't just achieved incredible technology. They had learned something about the nature of existence itself. "They're saying that what happened here, the war and its aftermath, was necessary," Zextor said slowly. "Humanity had to develop both the power to enforce change and the wisdom to use that power constructively." Ramirez nodded thoughtfully. "And the Alliance species had to learn that true strength comes from cooperation, not dominance. The conflict forced all of us to evolve beyond our primitive instincts." Dr. Foster activated a final display showing the current state of galactic civilization. The map was filled with indicators showing joint research projects, cultural exchanges, and cooperative ventures that spanned dozens of star systems. "According to the inscriptions, we're not the first species to go through this transformation," she explained. "The ancient civilization found evidence of others who had made the same journey. There's apparently a community of transcended species that exists in higher dimensions, and they're waiting for younger civilizations to join them." The idea was both thrilling and humbling. Humanity's victory over the Alliance hadn't been the end of their journey, but the first step toward something unimaginably greater. "How long do the inscriptions suggest this process takes?" Ramirez asked. "Thousands of years at minimum," Foster replied, "but the timeline depends on how quickly a civilization can learn to truly cooperate across species boundaries. The ancient ones took much longer because they had to figure everything out alone." Admiral Zextor's scales shifted to the gold patterns that indicated deep contemplation. "So our cooperation with humanity isn't just about rebuilding galactic civilization. It's about preparing for something far greater." Exactly, Foster confirmed. And according to the inscriptions, the more species that participate in this process, the faster it progresses. Every world that chooses cooperation over conflict accelerates the journey for everyone. Ramirez looked out through the conference room's windows at the construction project below. The site took on new meaning now. Those weren't just alien species working together on a research facility. They were sapient beings taking their first steps toward transcendence. 5 years ago, humanity revealed that we had been hiding our true capabilities, she said quietly. Today, we've learned that our capabilities are nothing compared to what's possible when entire civilizations learn to work together. The discovery in the galactic core had given every species a new purpose. The petty conflicts and territorial disputes that had dominated galactic politics for millennia suddenly seemed insignificant, compared to the possibility of joining a community that existed beyond the physical universe. The inscription ends with a promise, Dr. Foster noted. When we're ready, when we've truly learned to value all sapient life equally, they'll make contact. The transcended civilizations will welcome us into something called the Gratian Deck. What?